Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Equal justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Trustee Patterson, Trustee Miller, Trustee Williams, Trustee McOwen, Trustee Meeting, Trustee Jarosz, Trustee Saunders, Trustee Torres, Trustee White. Quorum is present.
Communications from the public.
Good evening, everyone. The Mount Vernon Board of Education recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms of board policy. Speakers must register in advance no later than 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting by contacting myself, the district clerk, in person here at 165 North Columbus Avenue, by phone at 914-665-5235, or via email at rmccormack@mtvernoncsd.org. The board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing a specific student, parent, teacher, administrator, or other Mount Vernon education official or employee is strictly prohibited. Such complaints must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak, with up to 1 additional minute to be allotted for that speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent or other staff members at his or her discretion may immediately respond to the speaker's remarks. Our first speaker this evening is Oscar D. Oh, can you bring up the...
Wait, one wanted to help me out with that one. Alright? Until we went to executive session, so I can get it together.
But we can up the time.
I'll do it. You want me to do it?
We apologize, we're having some technical difficulties with our live streaming this evening and some of the presentations. Mr. Davis.
Good evening, everyone,
Good evening.
and Happy New Year. I'm stuck in 2 places. I'm supposed to be speaking tonight, and I'm stuck at work at the same time. But I just want to say to this community and to the superintendent of school. I'm born and raised here in this community. I've seen a lot happen in this community. And I'm going to say I am so impressed with what's been going on in the school district. I want to thank the superintendent and his administration for doing an excellent job. Even though I'm a worker here, I'm an employee here, I'm an elected official. And when you see something that's happening good, you should praise it, right? When you also see something that's not right, you also bring it to the front. But I'm a little nervous here, but let's be patient with me. But I do have one concern, and I'm asking for this body to take into recommendation to look at changing some of the names of the schools in the district. I have an article that is in front of me, dated January 22nd, 1939, and the article reads, Dr. William H. Holmes. That school, home school, is named after that superintendent. Dr. William H. Holmes, superintendent of Mount Vernon Schools, that Negro teachers should not be employed in the local school except for classes in which Negro children are in the majority. I I think I need to read that over. I'm a little nervous. Be patient with me.
Don't be nervous, brother.
Dr. William H. Holmes, Superintendent of Mount Vernon City Schools, that Negro teachers should not be employed in the local schools except for classes which Negro children are in the majority. And I don't believe that's our mission, the current mission of the Mount Vernon City School District. And with that said, if you look at the majority of students that attend that school, they are Negro students. And I think that the school should actually look at the other names of the other schools, see what that individual stood for, and then make some adjustments. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. I never seen you nervous before.
You ever seen me nervous before?
Our next speaker is Brenda L. Crump. And the timer's working now.
Well, see, I didn't hear you say that with Mr. Davis. Why you got to sing me out?
I was running around.
I didn't do what I was going to ask, but, you know, so that's good. Thank you. Where? Oh, up there, okay, I'm looking still over there. All right, good evening, everyone. First I want to speak about, because I forgot the last time, so I want to put that at the top of my list, and that is public hearings. When the district is having public hearings, we as residents get robocalls when there are concerts, but we don't necessarily get robocalls for public hearings. And so I've spoken about this before, and I've asked about the procedure, the process, you know, how is it selected as to what topics get robocalls. So I'm bringing it to the forefront again because the district just recently, had before the closing of the year a public hearing. I think it was the safety public hearing, and the district had, concert, and we as residents got called about the concert, but we didn't get called about the public hearing. Anytime there's a public hearing, I believe, asking that the district do the robocall and all the other, the alert system, K-12 alert system, or K-board, Blackboard alert. Do it because public hearing is just that. And I think as trustees, the same way you campaign to the public to get the public to know that you're running any public hearings, you should go all out with letting the public know that the public hearing is taking place and for them to attend. So I want to go back to also transparency with the district, because when community people come up here and speak, and then we go sit down and the administration, the superintendent, board, or whomever address what's said, then it's left like that. And I was a little disheartened about the last meeting. And yes, I'm speaking about something from the last meeting here in the new year, because it was said in public, done in public, so I'm going to address it in public. And anybody know me know I always come to you, whoever the individual is, and say, can we sit down and reason together and do it that way? But since it was done publicly and it was left that way, I want to address it publicly. And that is with the audio recordings for the district, because we have at least 2 school board trustees that's on the dais now that was here when I was up there, and we know that the district did audio recordings. We did a live stream, we did video, and we did audio. And my question I asked was, when did we stop the audio? Why did we stop the audio? And when are we going to begin the audios again? Because just like for the 7:30 a.m. morning meetings, the 8:30 Sunday a.m. morning meetings, when you didn't have the live stream, you would have had the live recording, the audio recording for the community. And that just abruptly stopped. So when did it stop? Why did it stop? Because how it was left is that the statement was made, to my knowledge, we've only did live stream. To my knowledge, we never did the audio recording. So the statement was, as long as I can remember, live streaming and video recording was done, but we also did audio recording. And the little switch is right up there to the left, my left up there. We did audio recording. So I was a little disheartened by, we had board members that were sitting on the dais that was there when I was there and know that we did audio recordings and let that statement stand like that to the community. And for others who know that we did audio recording in the community. So those questions still stand in regards to the audio recording. Identifying information. Identifying information with the resolution. So also what was left standing, Dr. Hamilton, as I've said to you on that one-on-one, I've said on the dais as a trustee, I've said at the podium, that sometimes everything that takes place, you as the superintendent might not know, and that's why you have all your, deputies and whatnot, so they can report back to you. So when it comes to the contracts attached to resolutions, Dr. Hamilton's statement was that, all resolutions that there are contracts associated to, they are attached, unless they go into the executive session, but as soon as not in the middle of a sentence, I see the red, and I appreciate it, I'm putting up this time. But Dr. Hamilton said that, when you go into executive session, those resolutions that have to, the contracts have to be discussed, and then after there's a motion moved on and some action, then it's put up. So it was not put up, it was left as though those were put up. It's many times, and it's resolutions that contracts are associated to and the contracts are not put up. So I'm hoping this point going forward that they are put up without someone having to say something, namely myself and others have spoken about that as well. But for one particular resolution, it did go up, but my hope is that it's not singling out any particular resolutions, but all resolutions where there are contracts associated, that those contracts go up. So I've seen the red mark, and that's my time. So I want President, why do you have to do that? I'm bringing it to a close. So I see that that's my time. So I will stop because I know that there are other meetings and I'll be back. So I just roll it over. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Hammurabi Nesba Bey.
Good evening. My title is Hammurabi Nesba Bey. I used to be called Vernon Miles.
I don't think
I came to the mic is on or off.
It's not for you.
And then turn the mics up.
I'm Hammurabi Bey. I'm here today in reference to an incident.
If you hold the microphone, it's not as much for us here, if people in here can hear it, but the camera at home doesn't pick it up on it.
Thank you.
Turn up your volume. Hello. I'm Hammurabi Bey. I've been here many times before. Some people might know me. But I heard of an incident that happened at Davis School in reference to a teacher saying some bad words about our children. I came here to find out what's going to be done about that. And I did some reading, and I need to find out what's going to be done by the board and by the superintendent, or are we going to go someplace else with it? Also, Dr. Hamilton, I spoke to you a while back about phonics into the school system, the whole school system. I have a class teacher of etymology at 20 East 3rd Street, and I will guarantee you that most of you in here do know nothing about etymology. Our children cannot read. Our teachers cannot read. I've taught teachers how to read rulers. Something is wrong in this system. We need to fix it. And I second Mrs. Crump's motion there. Something has to be done. When I came in here, it looked like it was a big party. Everybody was in here laughing. There's nothing here to laugh about. You're sacrificing our children. Whoever that person was, we need to make sure that either she's gone, the board is gone, the superintendent is gone, or we gone upstate. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Raymond Copeland.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I know I'm going to need a little bit more time tonight. And I'm asking you, and I'm pleading with you to give me a little more time, because it's so difficult to say what needs to be said in 3 minutes. And I want to remind you and the audience, what's the rush to get the heck out of here? Before this board looked like it looked now, we was here 2 o'clock in the morning fighting. 2 o'clock in the morning. you to get up there. So I'm only asking for 10 minutes. And I gave you a lot of my time. I'm asking for a little bit back. Thank you. Mr. Cromer?
Mr. Copeland, I'm sorry, we can't give you 10 minutes.
Well, how much can you give me over? Y'all cut it anyway, because it used to be 4 minutes. Yes. I was up before y'all got here, and y'all made a lot of changes. That was not one of the better ones.
Mr. Copeland,
It used to be 4 minutes.
it is 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and then we
So
set,
we
there's
used,
a
I'm saying how it used to be. You changed it.
Look,
You didn't let me know.
We got a lot of time.
Now, my time hasn't started. No, it hasn't. Mr. Cromer,
Yes, sir.
would you please hold up my sign? You're the gentleman beside you. I want to take you back to time.
Mr. Copeland, this is not necessarily an endorsement. I'm doing a favor for my neighbor.
Can you see it? Can you see my sign? It's not mine, it belongs to Mount Vernon. The Coalition for the Empowerment of People of African Ancestry. That was the movement in the 90s that got you there. Need to know from where you came in order to know and appreciate where you are. 2 o'clock in the morning, fight with the superintendent, fight with the district. Refuse to go home. Wouldn't take no for an answer. That's the change. That's the most powerful sign that ever been presented in Mount Vernon. Why? Because it brought the community together. For the first time, all the churches, everybody in Mount Vernon came to this organization because it was due for a change in this district. CEPA, Coalition for the Empowerment of People of African Ancestry. And when we was trying to find a name for the organization, and some people say, no, you can't put the word power in there. Why not? You're going to defend people. They don't want you to have power. That's why we want it. Power. Now, having said that, you can let it down. Let it down. Let it down.
Mr. Copeland, you're making a point?
I hope I am.
Don't get ears open.
Now, if, you see, the thing about it, you're rushing. You're rushing to go home. Or wherever you gotta go. 2 o'clock in the morning, the same room. Over at the school over there, we fighting for y'all. Y'all rushing. 3 minutes, you out. That's like a kick in the behind. Don't do that. Give us a chance to express ourselves. Fought for you. Die for you. Please don't do that. Now, the incident that happened on December the 5th, 4 days before my birthday, I turned 75 years old. Turned 75, December 9th. Been in the trenches a long time. Right, Miss Rosemary? A long time. You was there. You know the struggle we went through. And it's not over. We as a people have a tendency to make one step forward and sit down. You can't afford to sit down. You got to keep moving. You can't do that. 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. Please. Now, what I would like to see done is a forward move. Maybe I should hang out with Oscar since he sees a lot of positive things. I need to start hanging out with you, Oscar.
Come on.
Yeah, because that's what we're looking for, positive things. I'm sure there's some here, but we don't know about them. Why don't we know? You get reports, and I had said once before, whenever there was a report that's given out about the money in this district, the community needs to have that information before the meeting. And what I would like to have done tonight is for each member to speak out your feelings about that incident. Because you are the boss.
We cannot do that.
Y'all are the boss. I'm not asking for personal information. I know you can't release that. I'm not asking that, but you sit there, you need to express yourself how you feel about what happened.
Mr. Copeland,
Yeah.
I'm trying to respect you right now, but your time is up.
Okay, I'm
You
gonna.
haven't made a point yet. So,
I haven't?
No, not to my knowledge.
Were you listening?
Yes, I am listening.
Oh my gosh, what a shame. Am I talking to deaf ears?
No, you're not, but if you wrap it up where we have other speakers.
Okay,
please.
what I would like to have done tonight is for each school board trustee to respond to the incident that happened at Davis School on December 5th at the workshop. Good night.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to take a moment to respond. Yeah, it would be irresponsible of me not to respond to Mr. Day's commentary about our teachers can't read and our students can't read. I find that offensive and insulting. We hire very competent teachers who are working very hard to make sure our students meet new, challenging academic standards in a very rapidly changing global economy. So I take exception to that. In regards to the incident on December 5th, that matter was investigated, appropriate disciplinary action has been taken, and that's all we are at liberty to share as it relates to a personnel matter. I shared with Mr. Copeland in an earlier meeting after the last board, between the last board meeting and this one, what my stance was on that and what actions I was intending to take. Those actions have been taken, and that's all we're at liberty to share at this time.
That's the one where you said you slapped on the wrist and said don't do it no more?
That's the one I told you I would take appropriate action on, and that's what I did, sir.
That's not a good one. That's what I want to hear. So if that's the end of it for you, we know what to do. That's all I want to hear you say.
Our next speaker is Franklin Cromer.
Good evening to everyone and Happy New Year to all of you. I came from a family that says before you chop a person's head off, you should always give them some praise about the good things they're doing. Here in Mount Vernon, I've been coming to this board for over 50 years. And the topic that my brother was speaking about when he first came up here, I'm not nervous. That's the year I was born, so you know how young I am. I was born in 1939. But what I'm here to say, and I want us to be very serious about this, Mount Vernon has been good to me and many others like me, but it also has its faults like we do. My point tonight is that I take it at heart because I think of all of the children in Mount Vernon as my children personally. It doesn't matter what they look like or who they come from. We want them to all be treated right to get a good education. And I was very hurt when I heard of the situation that took place on December 5th at Davis School. It was so horrific that some of the teachers that were in the meeting, they were very cordial and polite. They got up and walked out of the room. They didn't say anything. But then we had a couple of them that stayed and made themselves known about how displeased they were of what went on. So I applaud you to do something, and maybe you won't tell us what the disciplinary situation is, but I would talk very strongly to any of the people on the board, yourself, the teachers that work here, and anyone else that's affiliated with this system, to be careful of things that come out of your mouth, because you cannot take them back. And I'm sorry is not an excuse. That's my plea tonight.
Our next speaker is Abdul Bey. Saragin L. Saragin L. S-A-R-A-G-N-E-L. that concludes our public comment this evening.
Thank you. Report of the superintendent.
Good evening all, and Happy New Year. We will begin our superintendent's report with an update on change orders that are on the agenda this evening. Followed by that, I will share a status report 1 year later on the audit report that was last year, February 2018, and where we are as it relates to our corrective action plan in response to that audit report. And then we have some good news to share with you in terms of our laptop distribution at the STEAM Academy. And lastly, our weekly news bulletin, which we debuted today. Each week on Tuesday, we will provide a short PR release news bulletin that will go out to the masses and in our community. And we will highlight those things that are in our academic bucket, those things that are from our budget office, upcoming events and things of that sort, in our efforts to keep our community informed and engaged. I encourage you, once you receive, if you're on our email distribution list and receive that, to please share it. If you are not on our email distribution list and would like to be on it, to let Rick McCormick know. But we encourage you to share those stories, visit our social media platforms, and make sure that we are getting the word out. And this is again to improve our communication in our district. So to Mr. Felicio and Mr. Vadiello regarding the changes that will appear on the agenda this evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent. My name is Michael Felicio. I am the Director of Facilities, and to my right is Tim Vadiello, the Senior Architect. As become a matter of course, we go over the change orders to our bond projects at the bi-monthly meetings. This evening we have 19 change orders. I'm going to just read them briefly, who they're from, the location, what the scope of the change order was, and then of course we will entertain any questions that anyone may have. Is that okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
First change order is at Thornton School from Tolt Electric. It was electrical contractor to rewire lights in stairwell G, the lower level corridor, and the elevator machine room. Second one was also at Thornton School. Tolt Electric, the electrical contractor to replace damaged conduits and wires to restore power to room TH118.
Can you speak into the mic, please, Mike?
Yes, and that was an unforeseen condition. Number 3, Thornton High School, Tolt Electric, also an unforeseen field condition. It was an electrical contractor to provide power and wiring to facilitate the installation of a sump pump in LL41 as per two of the panels, E300 and 500. Thornton High School, Tolt Electric.
Could you explain what an unforeseen condition is?
So change orders come about in several different ways. One would be a field condition. We open up a wall or a floor. We don't expect to see what is actually underneath that wall or floor, and we have to take some additional action to complete the task at hand. And that is what would cause these particular change orders. Or there is an error and omission in the actual bid plans where something was not put on the plans or read incorrectly, which creates a field condition which would create an additional change order. Those are the two main types of how we come about with the change orders that we have. Thornton High School, Tolt Electric, to remove remote existing low voltage wires and conduits at a Lulu shaft at the main entrance. A Lulu lift is an elevator that that we use for disabilities, wheelchair transports up and down from floor to floor. Pennington Elementary, Nyrum Construction, to remove cast stone lintel and sill in one of the masonry openings. So the opening had to be bigger. So what a lintel is an opening in a masonry wall. It's the piece of steel that holds up the masonry above the opening, because obviously there's no brick in the opening. So the lintel is what holds it, so we needed to replace that. It was unforeseen. Pennington Elementary, Pennington K-8, the Pennington School, NYRA, removal of an unforeseen rock for excavation and installation in the south side drainage system. So there's two types of rock, mass rock and trench rock. When we did the excavation at the Pennington site, we came across a lot of trench rock when we were trenching for our Coltec system, which is a drainage system, and now again on the south end for additional drainage. The problem with this particular type of excavation is this probably will happen again as we open up more of the ground. We did probe holes at the beginning of the project, but we just couldn't see what was below some of the surfaces. And when some of the rock we saw, but we went to move it, it was much larger than we anticipated and had to get additional equipment in there. Yes, please.
Good evening. We also had included allowances into the bid documents, but there was such extensive rock underneath the soil that the soil borings didn't capture at the time the documents were developed. We've already used the allowances that were incorporated in the bid documents, so that's why these particular change orders are being generated to address that rock to complete the work.
Thornton High School S&L Plumbing contractor to replace existing leaking pipe in LL21. Again, opened up, excavated a wall or a floor, see that there's additional pipe that is broken. It was unforeseen, could not see through the walls or the floors, and we had to make the change. Thornton High School, NYRA contracting, investigate existing storm drains. Thornton School particularly sits on a very high water table, so when we did our investigations of the drains into the ground that is on our property, we had many collapses, and we're getting water infiltration into the building, either from the ground or at the base of the wall structures where the masoneries met each other. So we had to bring in a third party to actually investigate all of the drainage at the Thornton site that ties into the storm system or the sewer system that the city maintains. We are confident that we have answered all the drainage questions up to this point. Obviously, if we open up a floor and there's another drain that we did not see or know about, you know, this is a 100-year-old building that has plans that don't exist anymore for original construction, and we're doing, you know, the best we can to try to anticipate the direction of the piping. Yeah, so there was the reason that NYRA got this is they just subbed it out for us. They actually held on to the subcontractor, and we used a third party for that investigation. The next 5 change orders are for the 5-school project for the science rooms, Holmes, Columbus, Lincoln, Parker, and Williams, equaling $5,800. It was these were for, in the summer we needed to expedite the delivery of doors and frames for the opening of the building. So that was the expedited cost, and they're broken down by school if any of the board members or community would like to see that. When in the Columbus and Williams auditoriums, as you know, they're renovating the auditoriums. The seating is on concrete slab. The slabs are old, so we went to drill into the concrete that is existing now. It basically fell apart. So we used epoxy bolts and epoxy concrete in order to shore up the new seating that we're putting in, which created a change order. Parker School, Bertucci Plumbing, these are credits. So these are credits for work that was, we didn't use an ejector pump that was in the original plan. We got credit for that. Got another credit from Piazza Brothers for Columbus School, and that was the scope of scarifying the flooring. So when we put down flooring, we scarify it. What that means is we rough it up in order so the adhesives and bond to the new flooring that we're putting, and in both auditoriums, we didn't need to do that, and we received a credit for that. And the final one is all non-credit, so it's the 5 schools, Piazza Brother, general contractor at Lincoln School to provide an allowance to cover the cost of casework. So this was an omission. In the casework design on the science room, they missed a portion of the wall, and we needed to get an additional piece of casework in there. And that is it, sir.
Board members, does that answer any questions that you may have relative to the change order on today's agenda?
I have 2 follow-ups, actually.
Sure.
One is the rock in Pennington. That was $32,000. I don't know what the heck they did. But you're saying you're anticipating more than that?
So excavation under the ground is hard. We do borings, and we did a lot of them at the beginning of the project, but as you may encounter initial boring and come into some rock, and then when you go to excavate that rock, it's sitting on top of a rock that's the size of this room. And so you need to bring in special equipment. It's very expensive to do that stuff. And as we investigate it, we find the shelving rock that's there, and we blast it out or dig it out or pull it out or whatever we have to do to get it out.
At this stage, I'm sorry, Steve, at this stage of Pennington construction that is near completion, do you anticipate any further excavation?
I do, because we have a little more drainage to do continuing on the south side. So, like I said, we don't anticipate any more, but it is possible that we will run into some additional rock.
Barbie, trustee.
No, that was fine. It's fantastic. You were just sharing it in there. And then my second question about the storm drains at Thornton. That was, again, it was a pretty decent amount of money that went towards that as well. And my question is, do we know exactly what they did? Because unless they were cultivating fairies who flew into the storm drains, I'm slightly concerned about spending $15,000 on that.
So we have a very detailed report. They used cameras and types of sonar and radar to actually get down into the areas to see if there's any pinging back, if there's any collapses in these storm drains. Some of these drains are, 24 inches. They handle a lot of water, and when water is infiltrating into the building, we have to get to the bottom of it, no pun. And so we need to use whatever technology we have to try to see inside these pipes that, like I said, are 100 years old.
But the expectation is that we've now completed that, we've seen everything we need to see, there is no expectation for now.
There is no expectation. Everything we have in the knowledge that we have now is complete. If we open something up that we didn't even know existed, that would be an additional, we would make a decision, a field decision on whether or not how we're going to pursue that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to keep on this point though, because I'm still concerned. What is the end result of this investigation that they did? Did we end up with a map of all of the pipes and where they are for going forward?
Well, it's not, it's not a map like you would see on a Rand McNally. So they're data points that come on to each. They go to a certain, they find the drain. They try to figure out where it's going to. They channel it as much as they can with cameras and with sonar, and then they make turning points, and they use GPS coordinates to see where we are headed with the water, and if we can divert it and go to a different direction. If we have a collapse, we found a 60-foot collapse in a very large pipe, so we had to cut the pipe at one point and try to divert around it into another portion of the storm drain. It's very intricate work. And the problem is there's nothing sexy about this stuff. This is under the ground. This is really hard to, we're not putting in nice furnitures or finishes or anything. This is digging up, looking where sewer water and storm water is going. It's tough work. It's hard to, yeah.
So we obviously received a report from the company. I'm sorry?
Can't hear you.
We received a report from the company that did the investigation, and as part of the project manual, when the job is complete, the information that we're discovering and any changes that are made in the field during the course of construction will be incorporated into as-built documents. So it will be documented on plan drawings that the district will receive. So we have that information going forward for future projects and for reference that we can refer back to.
So you referenced one 60-foot collapse, and that was rerouted?
So we came up with a lot of different collapses and a lot of different compromised pipes, clogged pipes, pipes that we couldn't even see through. But the issue with Thornton is that the water table is really high, so water comes in many different places. We've gotten almost all of it. The building is almost completely dry now. There are a couple of spots we're still investigating. So again, without opening up the entire ground and seeing the pipe, you anticipate where the water's going, you make a hypothesis on how we can correct this the most economic way and the least intrusive way, because the building is still open and occupied. So that's where the cost is. The cost is that we do this up at night, on the weekends, so it tends to, the bills tend to raise up.
Do you have clarity on where the district responsibility ends and the city responsibility begins?
Yes, that's pretty clear, and it's clear for everybody who's a homeowner or property owner in Mount Vernon. At the junction, at the street, not at the sidewalk, at the street, where it ties into the storm system, is where the city will pick it up from that point forward. So the city has also done investigations up to that point, and they actually went a little further on the north side of the building by the band room, and we found another collapse there. And we had some compromised roof drains. Well, it's not only underground, we're actually doing piping that is inside the walls as well, starting from the roof, the penetrations on the roof, all the way down into the Coltex. There are some old ones in the parking lot that then feed out into the storm system. The problem is that when the water comes down, it doesn't just go, it's not just a straight pipe into the storm system. It goes into a collecting area, and then it is done, it is either diverted or it's leached out into the earth, and then, you know, without documentation, and even the MEPs, the mechanical drawings that we have, it's not clear on what happened in 1900 with these buildings. So that's the
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're getting to a solution. I mean,
Clearly,
it's all good to have all these great 3D maps of the underground. I don't care about the maps. I just care that we stop flooding Thornton.
Yeah, so we are getting to a solution. Some of these drains that we've been able to open have been clogged for decades, we imagine. And the good thing about the documentation that we have now, it will live forever because it's digital now. So it's very precise and very clear, and for long after we're all gone and the next person is figuring out something, they'll have that information.
The other concern I had about this particular change order is some of the bills go back to August. So we're now 5 months out, and I would like to know why we're getting it on the agenda tonight as opposed to various ones over the last 5 months. How is it, I think you mentioned before this was subbed out to somebody else, so maybe the district didn't get the final bill until recently. I just want to know the history of why we're
Right, so we just received the bill, and I spoke to the business official today, and actually, the money is encumbered, so we know what we're spending. The longer it takes them to pay, the longer it stays, and we earn on that bond money on the FC. So we're not, as long as it's not something we didn't know about, as long as it's something, we don't really put the pressure on them to get it into us quickly. They get them into us in a very routine, regimented way through the construction manager. We meet weekly about it, and as they come up, we are receiving some still from the summer, but that could just be the company that's their billing process.
Is it just the school building that is affected, or is it the auditorium also?
Water, trustee? The auditorium is attached to the building, so
Right,
it's all,
right.
yeah, it's all the same. Yeah, the auditorium is dry. The auditorium is not, I have no knowledge of any, behind the auditorium, or in front of the auditorium, if you will, where the new main entrance is going to be, there was some trench issues there, but I think we've gotten that pretty, we have direction on that, so we have to channel that away.
My question is, it might be prudent, given the age of our infrastructure and the pipes, I mean, I went through that as a homeowner, the disaster. But anyway, we might want to consider, as we look at projects that are not yet underway, to add a contingency for this type of thing, because this is significant money that adds up.
Right.
And since we've already blown through the contingency for the rock or the pipe or whatever, I think we might want to consider this in the business office, because this is serious money that's going to add up.
So, I'll let you talk a second. What we've done for future projects, in Mandela for instance, is we've doubled the amount of preliminary work based on the information that we have from Thornton, Pennington, and Graham. Borings, contingencies, allowances, they've all been increased to the point where we will be able to we believe that we'll be able to sustain this and seriously get all this stuff in the upfront documents rather than coming at this point to do it.
Michael basically covered it. We have on the projects upcoming increased the contingencies that we're factoring into our budgeting for these unforeseen conditions, and we've done extensive probing in the case of Mandela, as well as at Davis, which we're continuing before we release the bid documents. So,
How much is that added to the Mandela cost of $18 million? Do you know?
how much has,
As a contingency, how much is that added?
in terms of the testing that we've performed thus far?
No.
The percentage that
Yeah.
we're factoring.
What are you factoring for Mandela? Like on an $18 million project, what are we factoring on that?
5% more.
5%. Okay.
Meaning 15 to 17. No, we're about 10 more.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we're at 10
we were
now.
at-
We're
yeah,
at
we were at 5
5%
before, we're at 10 now.
contingency, now we're at 10%.
Sir.
Thank you very much. You know, if I may, in the past, whenever there is a large amount of, in the past, when there's a large amount of work that's been added, it has to go back out for bid. In the past. It's supposed to go back out for bid. You can't get that one person all that work extra. It goes back out for bid. Tell me what you want to do.
Next up, thank you for that portion of the superintendent's report. Next, we are going to show a presentation that Mr. Silver and I did related to a year later on the audit report. This is on Soup Scoop, it's on the internet, on the website. It's also on our social media platform. But I wanted to share this with the board this evening in the event that you did not get a chance to see it. It is 20 minutes long. If you've already seen it, we can forego that and just get to some salient points on it, if that's appropriate. Have you all seen it?
Yes.
You have not? Okay. You got a movie to watch. You go. Roll.
Can you turn the volume up?
Because all three monitors have their own volume.
Should turn them on.
And that controls all.
I think
That
that's,
controls
I'd make a million, like,
Can you do whatever you do when the board member is Skyping? Because we don't get that echo when somebody's being Skyped in. We don't get the echo. So what?
Is that live stream? Is that live stream? It's running its own audio on top of the video running audio. So they would have to cut the live stream in order for us to hear it here fine. I don't think we want to do that.
No. So the community should be hearing it.
Well, the laptop story is going to be the same thing. Because that's a video as well. If you,
Maybe not, try it.
we
Try
can-
it and see, maybe not.
we can, complete my superintendent's report after the next action item, after the next agenda item, and then return to that, give technology a chance to work on that. Is that sufficient also? Mr. Davis, I'm sorry. Yes.
This is the president's report, and I really don't have a report, but I would like to wish everyone within the sound of my voice a happy, healthy, loving, peaceful, joyful, and prosperous New Year. Also, we will be hosting a resume writing training at the STEAM Academy on Wednesday, January 9th at 6 o'clock until 8. And my last topic is that the Graham School, their main entranceway is finally completed. So and that's all that I have for my report. Let's go straight to committee reports. And I'll start with Trustee Saunders.
I really don't have a committee report for health and wellness. Meeting was canceled. It was for Monday, but yesterday, but we had to cancel it, so we were scheduling for again next month, the Monday before the board meeting. As Trustee White said, we're having the resume writing seminar tomorrow at the STEAM Academy from 6 to 8. The Special Education Advisory Council will meet on the 23rd at Rebecca Turner from 6 to 7:30, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald?
No formal report, but this evening at the end of our meeting, we will be doing the second reading and adoption of, and we will be putting up for adoption the three technology policies that we did a first reading of back in December. We will also be doing a first reading now of the grading, promotion, retention, and assignment policies. We'll do a first reading tonight of that.
Thank you. Trustee Miller?
Evening. We had a very productive meeting yesterday, family and community engagement. Our wonderful parent liaisons were there and got to participate in this amazing notion that I think probably has been batted around before, but as I mentioned in an earlier meeting, I learned about some districts that have started parent resource centers within their districts to serve the community and how it's really helped with outreach. So we had a presentation yesterday from the Hicksville, Long Island School District, and they have very successfully launched a parent resource center in their district. And basically, the way it works is they found a central location, which happened to be in their Board of Ed building, because it's going to be open anytime in the evening or whatever. If you need security, so it was kind of a cost-effective place for them to open their space, which basically they described as about 4 times the size of the conference room outside Dr. Anna Conroy's office. Anyway, we went through what they did, how they opened it, how much seed money they needed. And then we asked a few questions, and we're all getting the presentation, which we can share with others. But it's pretty impressive. They're doing it in the Buffalo district and a number of other districts, and they're finding that this is kind of helps complete that third leg of the stool, which is parent involvement. It seems like something that we should be doing. The parent liaisons were very excited about it, as was Dr. Bennett Conroy, and I would like to, charge the district with looking for a central space. I know we have space in the high school, in Mount Vernon High School, but that's not central enough for something like this, where we're trying to bring the community in. Basically, they use the Parent Resource Center as the hub of basically all community outreach. So there's some huge benefits, I believe, in centralizing these activities in a Parent Resource Center. So if we're doing a clothing drive or whatever, things of that nature. Also, the benefits to registration when you have a space that has kid-friendly areas. So instead of all the kids having to hang out in the hall when their parents are registering them, they have a place to play. So there's a really kind of an amazing eye-opener for me. I think it's something we should pursue as a district. The other thing that I'm waiting on right now is we are exploring the dates for the Beyond the Badge event, which is still very much on the students' minds, and we're hoping to secure a couple of Saturdays that we can run by the police department, a couple of Saturdays in the middle to end of May to reschedule that event. That's my report.
Thank you very much.
Not scheduled yet.
Trustee Torres?
Sure. Good
You all right?
Okay. Excuse me, I'm not feeling so great, so I'll do my best to get through the report, and if I stop suddenly, it's because I'm unable to continue. I'll proceed. Good evening, everyone. The Budget Committee met on Thursday, December 20th, before the holidays. We had a fairly extensive agenda. Part of our review included reviewing the overtime that was paid during the 2017-2018 fiscal year to analyze and understand the positions that incur the most overtime expense and the reasons for the expense. The OT report reflected a significant sum that was allocated to the district office due to the ongoing all-day registration over a period of 3 months, including some evenings. Among the top 3 positions incurring overtime were cleaners, custodian, and head custodian. And those were primarily due to construction-related work. We learned that though no employee can be paid with the bond, each major project has an overtime allowance whereby the district incurs the overtime expense and the district is reimbursed by a reduction in payment to the contractor. The Budget Committee has requested information on the actual payments made as a result of the various construction projects so that we can get a better understanding of the allocation of overtime. And we looked at several other positions as well and the corresponding overtime guidelines for those overtime hours as well. We also discussed the health insurance expense. It's currently 10% of the budget. We received a notification from the statewide schools cooperative health plan, and they approved a rate increase for non-Medicare members of 6.95%, which is higher than anticipated, and that applies to approximately 1,200 employees. We requested a report, the Budget Committee has requested a report on the total anticipated health expenses going forward, and we expect to review that in an upcoming meeting. We discussed the implementation of Envision and the potential savings that can be reaped as it continues to evolve and as there are additional efficiencies that are achieved by reducing paper timekeeping and purchasing processes, and that's something that's going to be an ongoing project, and the Audit Committee is also overseeing that, and there'll be additional reports once we have more information on the savings in labor and supplies that it produces. We reviewed the district's debt service, which is the current total debt is at $152 million. $120 million is attributed to the old bond, and $32 million is allocated from the restructuring bond. We will be reviewing a debt service schedule for the next 5 years to better understand the impact of the debt service on the budget, not just for next year, but the future years, especially as we look to try to prepare a budget for 2 and 3 years out. Okay. The district will be submitting a RFP, or going out to bid for its food service, and it's currently exploring other providers. The district currently uses Sodexo, but is still contemplating which other providers can possibly provide that service. The last item the Budget Committee discussed was the impact on the budget of busing students to Thornton Last year, the busing was paid for by a grant which expired, and after the expiration of the grant, the district absorbed the cost. And so the budget committee has asked for more information with respect to the parameters that were set in the grant for busing students that were participants in the grant. And we'd like more information on the cost and the conditions or requirement for continued busing for a particular cohort or any cohorts that the grant applied to. So that's essentially the items we discussed. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 18th at 8 a.m. The agenda will be posted prior to the meeting and all are welcome to attend. Thank you.
Trustee Schwartz, I had two questions. The Sodexo contract, when is that up? To the end of this school year?
Yes.
So what's the timing in terms of going out for bid?
We'll be going out for bid probably in the next 90 days.
Yeah.
We're required to. This contract is over. It's a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
This is the final year.
Okay. And then on the health insurance, can you help us put the 7% in context? Like, what were the rate increases for the last few years for health insurance? Do you happen to know?
That information I don't have with me, but perhaps can.
Sure. It was about 4% last year.
Excuse me, Mr. Silver.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please use the microphone and go to the podium.
Good evening. The health insurance increase last year was about 4%. However, Trustee Torres mentioned that the non-Medicare portion of it was 6.95%, but the Medicare portion of it was 0% increase. So if we look at the totality of it, the Medicare means retired, non-Medicare means active employees. The active employees are about 3/4 of the population. So that having no increase for 1/4 of the cost brings it down to about 5.2% from the 6.95 overall increase.
Yeah, but still, it's, I mean, it puts your budget in context, right, for when it comes to budget time, when every year, 4, 5, 6% increase in healthcare.
It does. Last year, or 2 years ago, we went out when we discovered the rates at HIP were just awful, and we went out, bid, got a new company. That company went out of business right after we hired them. They stopped providing health services in New York. We ended up having everybody go to SwissJet. And I should tell you, I'm on the board of governors of the health insurance plan, and we are meeting next week, and I've already raised a strong objection. And part of the increase in the cost is because they're concerned about their reserves, which of course have to be plentiful in case there's an emergency. But I'll be bringing back to the board a report from that meeting, which is taking place next week.
Yeah, and obviously this is nothing unique to our district. It's just...
Oh, there's 23 school districts with about 35,000 lives.
Thank you, Mr. Silver.
Trustee Jaros?
We did not have a restructuring committee meeting, and we haven't scheduled one as of yet. We will let you know.
Trustee Name?
Good evening. The Education Committee met on December 17, 8 a.m. As we're continuing our series at looking at different departments, this time we have added the Career and Technical Education, the CTE, to come and present to us the status of the CTE program in Mount Vernon High School. And the one thing we could say is that the CTE program is growing in Mount Vernon, having gone from an enrollment of 34 students to 476, from 2017, 16-17, 2017-18. So which represent a very high percentage. And this is due to the number of course offering at the middle school now. So the middle school represent feeders. There are courses that are offered in certain middle school. I think there are 8 middle schools who participate, who offer career and technical education courses, so that when students come to the high school, they will have the opportunity and the choice, to follow the CTE path. So those middle schools are Benjamin Turner, Columbus, Grimes, Holmes, Lincoln, Parker, Pennington, Performing Arts, and the participating high schools are Mandela Alternative, Mount Vernon High School, of course, the STEAM Academy, and the Thornton Performing Arts. So what we could say, however, that there are some issues. I mean, let me talk first about the courses that are offered at in these at Mount Vernon High School. You have IT integrated application certification. You have TV production. You have print production. You have barbering. You have cosmetology. You have Cisco 12. I did not ask what it meant. And you have automotive technology. We did ask about a few, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, there was a plan to, I believe, have to collaborate with Lincoln Technology. However, those plans were, did not move forward because the automotive room in Mount Vernon, one of them was not, is still not available, is still not ready. And they needed a larger space. And what had happened, according to Mr. Gonzalez, was when the wall in Mount Vernon fell a few years ago, they used certain technology. At the time, the CT program was almost dead. So they moved a lot of storage into those rooms. And they are yet to be removed. Some of those, whatever storage they put there are yet to be removed. And we asked Mr. Michael and his team to see to what extent they could go and remove whatever is there to see for the CTE program and Marvin High School to realize what they have on hand so that we can move forward. Dr. Gorman just told me that the dental room has been repaired, for instance, and they will start probably next year, right? Okay. But the culinary program will not begin again until, I believe, not next September, but the following, maybe 6 months later, in January of 2020. There is a great effort, between the high school itself, the CTE program, and I asked what's the relationship between the high school and the CTE. The CTE is housed in the high school. Therefore, it's under the direction of the principal, of the administration of the school. And students do take courses. They have the path, way that could lead them to this type of certification where they could graduate, with being able to, to go into, to go and find a job directly. So we've also suggested that they perhaps once they, we develop some of these programs, we might be able to do this, something similar to what Bosses is doing, having other districts such as Yonkers or New Rochelle come and use some of those spaces if repaired. But these are part of the long-term goals. So what we asked was, right now, to define what the short-term goals are. They probably, not everything can be done, immediately, but they've been significant progress, like this dental room being ready, the culinary, moving to be ready in about a year and a half, and so on. And they're working for it. There are, of course, technical issues, linked. There's money issues, having, for instance, some of the students at Horton to having to transport them from Horton to Mount Vernon High School. So at some point, what we'll do is make a summary and make a recommendation, meet with them again, so that whatever needs, need to be accommodated, we'll work with Mr. Silver, in the budget for his coming budget to address those needs. Next meeting will be on January 16th at 8 a.m. And this time we've invited the grant department, Dr. BC, which has raised, a great number of dollar amount, for, grants for Mount Vernon. We just would like to know, the process and see to what extent we may be able to address other areas such as after-school programs, sports. You remember in November, we invited the sports group, to come and present. And one of the issues was also money. And sometimes, or after-school programs, there will be some of these sports programs. So, there is a lot of things that could be done through grants funding. So in any case, we're inviting them. We have questions that we would like to ask them. They will first do the presentation, and we look forward to inviting other departments to come and present to the education committee. Anything that has impact on students' learning, the education, we'll look into it. We'll ask the department to present and to see how we can improve it.
You said the automotive room was full of storage. Is that the only thing that's keeping them from using the automotive room?
There might be other issues, but one of the main issues, I believe, this was about because how do I call it? Working with Lincoln, Lincoln Technology has very specific requirements. And we did not meet some of those requirements. So, and what they need to do, I think, the first thing is to have that space. And those spaces aren't available right now because of storage. So, in order for them to move forward, they first need to identify what the space situation. And once they do, maybe they will be able to know what materials, they know what materials they need. So it would be another, perhaps it could be part of another bond, who knows, or whatever, in order to move forward. But I believe this is one of those areas, that is very essential for the children of Mount Vernon.
Regarding when you did the meeting with the CTE program, did the trades, the union trades, come up at all in the discussion? Because I and several other people over the past years have talked about getting electricians, plumbers, carpenters, etc., to start training apprentices as part of the CTE program. I don't know if that's getting off the ground, and if not, how can the community help?
They've come in the past.
Yeah.
We've had discussion with some of the unions.
Spoken to the mic, please.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Some of the unions have come in the past to have discussions with us about helping, but it seems like it's very contracted. So.
Right. I mean, I talked to contractors about this too. Dr. Hamilton, is it, in order to do a program, does a contractor also have to be a licensed teacher, or can they just be a contractor?
They have to work under a licensed teacher. They don't have to be certified per se, but they would have to work under a certified or in collaboration with a certified teacher in order for children to be eligible for credits.
Right. So what, I guess, what is the limiting factor from expanding this program, further? Is it, do we need more budget? Do we need contractors who are interested in doing this? Do we need teachers who are interested in supervising? Kind of, what's holding it back from expanding more?
Budget, updating equipment, relocating the materials that are currently there. We've been talking about, I actually talked about this briefly in cabinet this morning, about how we will continue to phase in additional programs and be sensitive to the other edict of that, maintaining costs simultaneously, and how we establish those priorities. But in terms of specifically expanding the CTE offerings and the plans for Mount Vernon High School in particular, we'll roll out a plan for how we will gradually expand those course offerings. The first on the list is getting the nursing assistant certification program back up and running.
Yeah, for sure. It was just on my mind because I happened to be talking to a Mount Vernon plumber this past week who, loves the idea, would love to help kids, and I just didn't even know where to point the guy in what direction,
I'm glad you raised the certification issue. Yeah, they have to be certified. And we did discuss the idea of offering, reaching out to some of those trades and, if one is interested, to start looking at the possibility of being certified as a teacher and work part-time. So teaching a class, 3 hours a day, would be additional income, would represent additional income for them. And there is a certification path, I believe, I was told it would be transitional A, that the state offers that enables them, after taking a certain number of credit, to be certified temporarily and get a time like 4 years to be fully certified. But it's an issue. How do you go and recruit those people? Because you cannot, for barbering, for instance, you cannot just go and get a barber, and because they're licensed, but they need to be certified also to be in the classroom. So there should be a process. How do we begin that? Should be part of the plan. Maybe offering them incentive. You come in, we pay for your courses. We're talking about how many teachers, maybe 5 to 10. And the long-term gains, benefits are worth, implementing and giving them incentive to go get those type of certification.
Any other questions?
I got the levels for the
Try and see if you can go to the next presentation on the news report on the laptop distribution. Is it going to be the same issue?
I got levels, but it's not pushing out. I got levels on this side.
Okay. Perhaps you can work on that while we go to
I'm
the
sorry.
exam.
I thought it was done.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes. That concludes my report at this time. To be continued. Yes, please. I'm sorry. I actually did that earlier, but if you want to.
Did you want to show me?
Yes. What Mr. McCormick is going to show you now is a sample of the news, well, not the sample, the actual news bulletin that was released today that I referenced earlier at the top of our report.
It's supposed to be a projector so I can do TV. Which one is it?
Oh, over here.
I don't know. I don't have it.
There it is. Oh, there it is.
Is it right here? But that's my email. That's what I got. Click here.
We're sorry. Very sorry.
Click there. Click there. Is it? Yeah. There.
It's up. So this is our weekly, scroll back, the district desk, weekly news from the Mount Vernon City School District. Starts out with a very brief message from the Office of the Superintendent, and essentially I'm sharing this is our launch edition. And our buckets for this edition is the STEAM Academy goes digital, and from the business office, efficiency and cost savings, drive budget development. So it's information about some of the efficiencies that we've identified in our budget process and where we are related to that. Community effort districts, literacy, community supports districts literacy efforts. That's the Barnes & Noble event that was spearheaded by Dr. Gail White-Wallace at Barnes & Noble, which was extremely successful in raising money to support the Superintendent's Literacy Initiative. Math Night brings out the masses. We had an incredible turnout at Math Night, and the participation of nearly 1,000 of our parents at Math Night. So clearly that is something that we will continue. And what was just shared in Dr. Ning's report is the CTE program returns to greatness and our efforts to restore the CTE offerings, gradually restore the CTE programs that were once very vibrant in our district and creating multiple pathways for our students to success. And the and some upcoming events that you may want to add to your district calendar. And we also give you an opportunity on the website if you are interested in attending or planning to attend, just so that we can get a number of, anticipate the number of attendees so that we can plan accordingly. So I hope you are as excited about the news bulletin as we are, as we put a protocol in place, and Trustee Miller has been very instrumental in helping us get these buckets streamlined and organized to facilitate this communication effort.
Yeah, may I just add one thing? One of the things that we're doing differently in this is in efforts to get people to our website, which many people do not know that almost everything they ask for we already have on the website, like instant translations to hundreds of different languages, et cetera, et cetera.
It's not an easy read website, and the community spoke about that at the last board meeting. So when people, I'm sorry, I know I'm out of order, but I just can't stand to hear administration and trustee continue to say our website, and it's not an easy, friendly website to find stuff.
That's why we're doing the bulletin.
That's why we're doing it. So if bear with us, Mrs. Crump, what we decided to try to do, one of the objectives with this new format is when a community member reads the headline, if they are interested in delving deeper, they click on more, which is a link that takes them directly to that content area on the website. And we're hoping by leading people to the areas that, all right, well, you have a point of view, but I'd just like to finish, please. By leading people to those areas, we will get them more familiarized with the website, and they may decide they want to look around a little bit, because frankly, the only way to get familiar with the website is to experiment and move around with it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Executive session, we will enter into executive session for the purposes.
We need a motion to enter executive session this evening. Second.
For what purpose?
For the purposes of discussing collective bargaining negotiations with the Mount Vernon Federation of Teachers, the TAs, security monitors. Teachers, I said that right? Yeah, I said the teachers. The Mount Vernon administrative group, and to review the employment history of particular personal persons, and to receive advice from counsel.
Second.
Trustee Jaros, Trustee McOwen, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
So this is the update on the audit.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kenneth Hamilton, Superintendent of the Mount Vernon City School District, and this is Soup Scoop. We are providing our community with an update on the district's corrective action plan as it relates to the state's audit of the purchasing and claims department here in the district. The audit was conducted in July of 2017, covering the periods of July 2015 through May 2017. The district did not have an opportunity at that time to have the customary exit interview with the auditors, so we did volunteer with the auditors in January of 2018. During that time, the auditors gave us an opportunity to submit a collective action plan in response to some of the citations that they noted, and we're here today to provide you with an update on where we are a year later. Joining me now is Mr. Ken Silver, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, who has helped to facilitate the implementation of the corrective action plan. Welcome to Soup Soup again, Mr. Silver. Thank you. So why don't we take the auditor's recommendations one by one and look at what our strategies have been to implement the corrective actions. So one of the recommendations that the auditors made, there were about 11 or 12 in total, if I recall correctly, and one of the recommendations was to provide guidance on soliciting competition for goods and services, including appropriate use of written requests for proposals, written quotes, and verbal quotes. And one of the steps that we talked about implementing, many of which were already underway at the time of the audit and had we been opportunity to have the exit interview, we would have been able to share that with the auditors. But where are we today in terms of action steps related to this corrective action plan?
So we have now long ago contracted with NYSBA, New York State School Boards Association, to provide policy services for us, to give us clear, concise policies about how to conduct the purchasing of goods and services within the school district. That was implemented a long time ago. The implementation is complete. We are following all those policy guidelines, and those policies as they apply to the purchasing department were approved by the Board of Education almost a year ago.
So one of the things that I noted in the corrective action plan and in the auditor's report was related to the transportation and the bidding of transportation services. What is our response to that?
The transportation contracts were given out for the most part in 2006 or thereabouts. Transportation contracts are not required to be bid ever. We're allowed to renew them indefinitely at no more than the consumer price index of May of whatever that year is. We have followed that guideline with either no increase or a minimum increase under the CPI rules. They cited us for not bidding these contracts, but these contracts were not required to be bid. In fact, we did tell them that these contracts were unavailable as they were in storage because there were renovations taking place in the Board of Education building at that time, and we could not get them. We told them that before they even started the audit, but they still decided to cite us for not being able to provide contracts that were many years old, even though the contracts were provided to the state every single year for all of those intervening years from 2006 until 2017.
So as it relates to the policies that were developed in terms of governing guidelines on purchasing and requiring bids, where do we stand to date in terms of those policies?
Well, I want to speak to transportation first. We did go out to bid on transportation. We were very dissatisfied with the results of the bid, and we are now going to go out again for next year to try to do better to reduce the cost of transportation. All the other purchasing policies as it relates to these matters that were cited by the state are in place. Some of them are ongoing as they relate to our software implementation plan in our what's called Envision through BOCES. That's not entirely implemented because we simply are not ready for that implementation. When we got here 5 years ago, we were the last school district still using the old software. And we worked very hard to move into the new software, but it is not complete. But everything that could be complete is now complete.
So the second audit recommendation required the district officials and employees to adhere to certain district policies and regulations when procuring goods and services. Where are we with that?
So some 6 months before we received the audit report from the state, and remember, again, we had no opportunity to speak to that, we started our own training of our employees. That began in July of 2017. So that was a year and a half ago. We began the training with our employees to have them better understand the purchasing policies of the state and the GML referred to here, which is the General Municipal Law. And so we are following those policies very carefully. We'll come to other items in this list, but part of it has to do with bidding. We've joined various state bids. We've also become a part of bids for other school districts and other municipalities so that we don't actually have to do our own bid for every single item.
So action steps under audit goal recommendation number 1 and audit goal recommendation number 2 have been completely implemented.
Yes.
And the third recommendation was around clarifying documentation requirements to be used during the solicitation process, including documentation for the decisions that are being made. Where do we stand with that particular recommendation?
There were a number of training sessions having to do with this. The final training session was actually in December during the winter break. We had the staff who were working during those days in for a workshop at the high school, and they spent the whole day there learning how to do these purchasing procedures better.
I'm sure the turnover and some of the personnel in the business office has a lot to do with that as well. Do we have plans for ongoing training to make certain that the business office staff is consistently trained as new people come in?
Yes, so we are working on training the business office staff as well as the building staff, where most of the challenges are because of the turnover of building staff employees. Also, the problem is that there's not a great deal of staff in the buildings to do this work. So we are designating a person from the business office to go on a regular basis to work with the building staff at their own computer, helping them to become more familiar with the software.
We had talked at one point about hiring a transportation consultant to provide some guidance in this area. Have we been successful in acquiring a transportation consultant?
We hired a transportation consultant last year, made recommendations, did a number of things, and the result of that was almost the opposite of what we had hoped. Our costs are up this year as a result of bidding. If we had just left it alone and not gone out to bid for transportation, we would be paying less. And again, we will be going out this year. We will be doing our own transportation consulting this year. We feel we can do a better job on our own.
Okay, our fourth recommendation from the auditors was to ensure that all claims are properly supported by adequate documentation prior to payment approval.
So we have now hired a new internal claims auditor who is not an employee of the district. And so that eliminates one of the big problems that the auditor spoke of, which had to do with the internal claims auditor being in the business office after the business office was closed because that person had another job in the district. So now that person comes in during regular business hours, and that has helped a great deal. Also, we are following some of the state guidelines in attaching contracts on a regular basis to these claims. We are also paying more attention to the details of the claim so that everything is appropriately done before the claim is paid.
So our corrective action items as it relates to audit recommendation number 4 has also been complete.
Yes, that person was appointed many months ago, maybe 6 months ago by the Board of Education, and she is doing a fine job.
Our fifth recommendation from the auditors was to monitor the activity within the computerized software to prevent unauthorized approvals. Let's talk about that because I remember when we started reviewing the audit report, there were interviews that were conducted and perhaps some misinformation. Regardless to how that information was presented, ultimately we needed to put protocols in place. How have we rectified that particular citation?
Before the state auditors were there, we had already signed a contract with BOCES to move to the new software. BOCES managed both the old software and the new software. When they moved the new software, that was when we decided to remove duplicate and extra vendors. We moved from some 16,000 vendors that were in the system going back many, many years to about a quarter of that in the end. We do business with many, many companies, and many people have a number of addresses, but the new system allowed us to change the detail of that such that we could understand better and remove duplicates and old vendors that didn't belong there anymore.
Okay, our sixth recommendation was to implement appropriate access controls and procedures to delete inactive employees from the accounting system on a timely basis. Now this, I know, had a lot to do with the change from the old system to the new system. And during the audit, we were still using the old system that you mentioned, Munis. Where are we today with that?
Yes, it was almost coincidental that the new system began at the same point as the audit began. But everything has been implemented. Employees are removed very quickly under the new software. This problem no longer exists at all, and I personally checked all 1,900 employees this past week over the vacation to make sure that every single person is in the right place, that is actually working for us. This was all done in this past week, and we are very confident that we have this down right.
Okay, our seventh recommendation from the auditors was to ensure access to the vending master file was limited to certain employees, and that a specific person was designated to set up and maintain the vendor database.
Yeah, so we have, only one person is actually allowed to communicate with BOCES, who manages all of our software, to allow access to those files. That request writing, it has to be approved by me, and it has to be approved by the person who actually manages it through BOCES. So we are very confident that that system is in place now and is secure.
We also, and you kind of alluded to this in a response to an earlier audit recommendation regarding the duplication of vendors on our vendor list. I know the transition from Munis to Envision has really given us an opportunity to do that, but this actually started in 2017. So I'm sure our community would be interested in knowing how this ended up on the audit as a citation to begin with.
Well, again, the coincidence of the new software happening at the same time as the audit could have made it appear that one thing was a result of the other, but it was not. I also want to point out that this is an ongoing process. It's implemented to date, but each month it requires looking at the vendors to make sure that we aren't putting vendors in that already exist. That's not to say that just because there are vendors in there, something goes wrong. It's just duplicate paperwork sometimes.
I'm interested in seeing us become less reliant on paper in the business office. Where do we stand in terms of automating some of our business operations and processing of purchase orders?
So the training of the building level employees in the implementation of the new software modules will help us to cut down on some of the paper. The clerical people at the building level will be able to simply enter absences or information that needs to go into the computer. We will not have to be faxed to the business office or delivered to the business office. It will happen right there at the building, and that will eliminate much of the paper. We are also working on eliminating some of the checks that we write and having wire transfers of payments to vendors, and just eliminating virtually all of the paperwork associated with purchases.
Okay, so the 9th audit recommendation cited the district for our failure to ensure that all claims, other than those exceptions allowed by education law, are audited and approved by the claims auditor before payment.
Yes, sometimes in the old system that we used, it was not possible to wait for the claims auditor to come in and approve something before it was paid. So we paid the bill and then she saw it afterwards. Now everything before it's paid is reviewed by the claims auditor and approved at that time. So we are confident that this system is working well.
The 10th recommendation was really about a check and balance. It asked that the district compare invoices against applicable quotes, bids, and contractual information in order to ensure that the vendors' prices are indeed accurate.
This also is something that began a year and a half ago, and we also put in an additional oversight plan of this about 5 months ago, in September of 2018. So we now have more documentation, more review, but also the fact that we are part of other organizations' bid process makes it work better for us.
And finally, citation number 11, or recommendation number 11, was to ensure that all claims are properly supported by adequate documentation prior to approval for payment.
So several of these are similar, are almost the same, but they did cite these 11 items separately. So we now make sure that every bit of documentation required for the claims auditor to approve the claim is attached to the claim, and that she does not have to hunt for these things. That's really what that refers to, that the claims auditor had to search for things in the files, but now it's attached to the claim itself.
So to recap, the audit that was conducted and submitted to the district in the latter part of 2017, which we had an opportunity to respond to in the early part of 2018, has essentially been complete. The corrective action plan is complete. Is that an accurate summation?
Yes, and it has been accepted by the state. The only thing I would add is that some of these things don't end. It requires ongoing viewing and making sure that things are done properly going forward. So it's not over, it's just it's a plan to move forward to do things in a better way.
Well, I want to commend the business office for being so proactive in getting this corrective action plan in place, and more importantly, for our continued efforts to be financially responsible and good stewards over taxpayers' dollars. We have been consistently reducing costs. We are now in our budget process for the upcoming school year, and I think we should also take this opportunity to talk very specifically about how we could be more transparent in the budget process and how transparent we have been from the onset about the audit and the corrective action plan. In terms of transparency, what steps have we taken in the business office to ensure greater transparency?
Most of the transparency relates to the budgeting process rather than to the purchasing process. So if we could talk about that for a moment, since we're right in the middle of our budget process for the current year, and very close to having the first draft of the budget finished for superintendent's review. What we did 5 years ago when we got here was to change the format from something that was unintelligible to something that a person could look at 5 minutes a year and understand. Everything clearly stated with detail about what each line of the budget is. This budget is now some 1,600 lines. And so for the person who doesn't pay much attention to this during the year, it could be something that they could not understand and be very frustrated. And we have worked very hard to make it very transparent and very understandable so that when anybody reads it, they can see, oh yes, we understand what this is. It says how many people are in each salary line, what they do, what this is about, what building it's in. Not just simply numbers as they was many years ago when people couldn't understand what we do.
I appreciate that. Well, as we close out this edition of Soup Scoop, I want to encourage our viewing and listening audience to go to our website where you will be able to see the full audit, the full corrective action plan, and my response to the auditors expressing our concerns and appeal that we were not afforded the opportunity to provide much of the documentation that was already underway, and had they reviewed this information, these citations would not have been listed on the audit to begin with. So I thank you for your time and attention. We look forward to seeing you next time on Soup Scoop, and please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and most importantly, pay attention to our district homepage where we provide as much information as possible. I'm Ken Hamilton, Superintendent of Mount Vernon City School District, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. So while Mr. Davis is loading up the next item for your viewing pleasure, that is a summation of our corrective action plan on the audit a year later. And again, that information is out there, and it's also on Facebook. Am I correct? It did get posted on Facebook? Yes. Okay. So that information is out there for anyone who would like to access it. The next item you're going to see is a news report that I think did a very good job with capturing the distribution of digital devices at the Mount Vernon STEAM Academy, and how excited our students were, and how impressed the media was. We got quite a bit of media coverage on this deployment of one-on-one devices.
The Mount Vernon STEAM Academy is hoping to prepare their students for a changing job market by exposing them to technology early on. The school distributed 250 laptops to students today. Possible's Allie Rosen shows us they're being used in the school curriculum.
Sample already started an essay. Christmas came late this year for 9th and 10th graders at the STEAM Academy in Mount Vernon. Each student is gifted a Dell 2-in-1 laptop/tablet, valued at $600 to use at home and at school.
For me, I love the computer itself. It's fast. I got my work done easily. I was able to actually do my winter packet for chemistry.
history. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This academy in Mount Vernon is the first STEM curriculum school in the county, and laptops are hopefully their tools for success.
There's a giant disconnect between a lot of schools, how they function, the tools they use, and what happens when students leave and they go into the real world. Very few people just use pen and paper. Most things are digital now, and it's a digital workflow. So getting kids to be very comfortable in that workflow and teaching them just helps prepare them for what's going to happen when they lose.
The goal is for the laptops to make classwork easier to manage and give the students the skills they need for life beyond school. For some, this will be their first time having access to a computer at home.
Before, since I couldn't use the laptop, I had to type on my phone, and it's really difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult because like you have to see everything. And now I have Word, I have Office 365, OneDrive, everything's in here. So
Well, yes, but I didn't have all of the abilities of Microsoft Word and things like that because my laptop didn't have enough space. But now I have 60 gigabytes to download all cool things. The funding for the laptops was allocated in this year's school budget. The goal is for every student at STEM Academy to receive a laptop by 2020. In Mount Vernon, Allie Rosen, FiOS 1 News.
And lastly, under the superintendent's report at the board president's request, at our next board meeting, we will be providing you an update on the bond and the status of the 2020 vision, how much has been...
The Mount Vernon STEAM Academy is hoping to prepare their students for a changing job, exposing them to technology.
A status report on the bond and the 2020 vision, where we are with implementing the 2020 vision, what's been spent and what's left to be spent, and what projects are still in the developmental stages, and a timetable for when we anticipate that will be completed. And that completes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Thank you. I thank Ken Silva and you for really doing that order presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next is...
Yes.
We did. Opportunity for board members to remove an item from the consent agenda. Anyone? Nada? Okay. Approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. McCollum, Saunders. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a motion from Trustee McOwen and a second from Ms. Saunders. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And
New
unfinished business.
unfinished business.
Unfinished business.
It's the second
That's the second reading.
Sure, I'll manage this. So, under unfinished business tonight, we have the second reading of the policies that we did the first reading of at the last meeting. We'll do them, just to remind everybody, we have 16.1 is the new policy on internet safety that governs things like controlling access to websites on district computers. The second policy is computer resources and data management, which specifically includes liability concerns. And for all these wonderful students who just got their new laptops, it allows the district to clarify what they can do on those laptops and whose property they actually are. And the final, the third policy is media relations, which just clarifies that kind of how the district is going to respond to media inquiries, use of district social media platforms, and what teachers just shouldn't be talking to the press without going through the proper channels on behalf of the district. So we'll do them one at a time. 16.1.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you to adopt this policy on internet safety.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Motion on 16.2, computer resource and data management.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Torres, Mr. Rose. All those in favor?
Aye.
item 16.3, media relations. Motion.
Motion.
Ms. White, second.
Second.
Mr. Rose, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
New business.
I wanted to raise a couple things. Number one, as we all know, our number one priority as board members is our fiduciary responsibility with our taxpayer dollars, and the school budget. I realized through my own persistent requests of information from the superintendent, which are basically have been met, and we're getting to the bond thing in the next meeting, which is excellent, that he's getting a lot of requests from a lot of board members for many, many different things. And one of the things that we talked about, and I said, okay, my bad, because I want to make things easier, is would it be helpful if the board as a collective group could discuss what our priorities are near term. In other words, for the next 6 months, what is it that we feel are the most imperative things to focus on? And remembering that we're supposed to be focused on ends, right, and not the means. We're supposed to be focused on what we want to get to, what is our goal, what is our objective. So I just wanted to raise that. We haven't had a chance to have a retreat on this subject matter since we actually did, I think, the 2020 vision, and I think it's important that we revisit this. But in my mind, and with some conversations I've had with other board members, it seems that we really should be focused on the bond. We said we were going to deliver by 2020 or 2020 and a half or whatever it is. The pre-K to 8 schools, the 3 high schools of excellence, and what else are we delivering? Universal pre-K, full day pre-K, and all K to 8 schools, and 3 high schools of excellence. So when we do the bond review in 2 weeks, and I'm looking forward to being sure that we have enough money to fulfill on that obligation, because there is no more. That's what we raised. We raised $108 million, and we made a commitment. The second thing I think we should be focused on is the long-term plan, a strategic plan. We don't have a plan beyond 2020, and we've discussed starting a strategy committee so we can actually sit down and brainstorm where we're going from here. Because by the time we're 2020, we're going to be needing to start plans and even have approvals for things we want to do in 2021. So that's another thing I would encourage us to be focused on. The other thing is, once we agree, I was hoping that if we could agree on our priorities, which are, having the best possible budget put forth by Mr. Silver, hopefully with a 0% tax increase, and also fulfilling commitment that we can make to the community that we will fulfill on the bond. To me, those are the 2 most important things to focus on, and anything else is, something that we can look at, but we really need to, in terms of allowing the superintendent to focus on those 2 things, to me, seems like the most important initiative right now. So I was just wondering if anyone else had any comments about that.
And if I could just piggyback that, Trustee Miller is making a point that I kind of brought to her awareness, and also followed up with President White, that oftentimes board members are request information or has specific projects or interests they would like the administration to work on, and all very, very well intended. But when we get 5 or 6 different such requests, it's very difficult for us to determine what those priorities are, and it sometimes takes us off task with providing the supports at the school level that our building principals and teachers need in order to effectuate student outcomes. So having some uniformity and a commitment from the board members that this is the information that we want, this is the focus that we're going to do, whether it's the next 6 months or the next quarter or whatever is a reasonable amount of time. I like to ask that the board be clear about that edict and that we work in collaboration to ensure that all of our efforts are focused on whatever those commitments are. And if it is the bond, which certainly makes perfect sense from my in my mind and from my frame of reference, and then to move on to strategic planning for post-2020, that would be very helpful for the administration. And if we could streamline communication and correspondence to different members of the cabinet, so that I, as the superintendent, would also have some barometer by which I can measure how time should be effectively utilized by cabinet members and district administrators, that would be also very helpful for us in helping us become more effective and efficient in the use of our time.
Well, I mean, okay, so taking one step back, number one, I agree wholeheartedly that I think the bond is super important to keep a gauge on where we are, how we're performing, and so that way we know what we can do and what we can't do. I think the budget, obviously, as I joke many times, the first time I paid the taxes on the house, I had to sit down and I held my chest because I said, oh my God, this is how much I'm supposed to pay twice a year? And they said yes and laughed at me. So taxes are a big issue for our community. We all know it is a big issue for the community, and therefore our budget is a big issue for the community. Second, I think that it's really important to have, I'm going to piggyback on the strategic plan planning committee potentially, to ensure that we're focused on not just, because the reality is it's great to have buildings, it's great to have nice buildings. You know, it's even better having kids who have great test grades, having kids who are learning. That's what, I mean, so there's a duality here of like, where is the money going and how are we educating the kids in the buildings? And I think that that's constantly a struggle when we're looking at, you know, what does the budget look like? What can we afford to provide the students? And what can, you know, what can we reasonably afford to provide the students? And I think that's an issue as well. The other thing I would mention, just in terms of going forward, that I think we have to really be focused on what we're providing. What do you always say? It's not equality, it's equity. Equity. So I think we really need to be focused on the equity of what we're providing one set of students versus another set of students, and just ensure that we are, you know, as even-handed as we can be with the whatever, you know, resources we have on hand.
I think the point is very well taken. It's, look, as a product of law, we're a nine-headed machine, right? Never in the history of the world has a nine-headed anything been efficient. So but that's what it is. That's what we are. But the point is very well taken that we all are very dedicated to this. We all have fantastic ideas, all of us, and they're all perfect ideas. But I appreciate how good and diligent and polite and consistent our superintendent is at reminding us of what his job actually is. No, I mean, to get to the point, I think I have lots of things I want to see happen in this district. I know all the other 8 of you do too. But I think it would be a very helpful exercise to try and think about those things in that, is this something I really want to see the district happen in this year, or really like in the next 3 years or the next 5 years, and try and put some perspective on what's important. So I think a retreat's a great idea. Or even honestly, we could just decide in a couple of meetings, like, let's just stay late. Let's just stay late and do the business and just talk for half an hour about it. That's fine too.
Yeah, I think.
So 2 in the morning.
Otherwise, it'd be Elmo. But you know, so maybe we could turn one of our meetings into a working session and kind of nail this down, and also set the parameters for the long-term strategic plan, which is important. We need everybody's input on that. But at the end of the day, our responsibility is the dollars and the student outcomes. And you know, what can we do?
How much money we have to make sure everyone is treated equal.
So we have to find a time when we can do that.
Yes. Or maybe we put it back on you, Dr. Hamilton. Why don't you pick a meeting that has a particularly light agenda in the next couple of months?
I'll be more than glad to do that. Meanwhile, however, over the next 2 weeks, we'll be working on the bond presentations, which is going to be time intensive. And I respectfully request that you give us the opportunity to do that so it is efficient. But meanwhile, in the interim, if there is specific information that you would like to see, shoot us that information in terms of what questions you may have in the bond that we can anticipate, and we can include that in the presentation so that we come out with a product that we can all get behind in the end and share with our community.
Can I also, I'm sorry, just really quickly, because one of the things that we were discussing, and we've discussed at a bunch of our meetings, is that we need to figure out how we can work within what we have. You know, ideally, would it be great to have all brand new buildings in our district? Absolutely. But we're not one of those upstate districts where we have this tons of space where we could just decide we're going to take the sports field for this year, put a new building up, and knock the old one down, and it'd be fantastic. So I think the reality is, also for the strategic plan, how can we work within what we have? How can we be creative about, you know, and one of the things that we've been discussing is how can we, maybe we can add 6 to 8 in the STEAM Academy, and then just like we have 6 to 8 in performing arts. We have the space in the day. Well, no, we have, I mean, at 6 to 8, meaning adding that middle school component to the high school building. Because ultimately, we have a lot of space in our high school buildings. And how do we get creative about taking the space to potentially, you know, just kind of figure out how we can get more creative with what we have. So I would just,
STEAM school, not
yeah.
right.
Yes, the STEAM high school, sorry. I get nervous too.
Yeah, right.
Would it be possible in that presentation to talk about what the emerging issues are with the new configurations?
Right. Yeah.
You know, at the school level, you know, we've changed from K through, or 1 to 6 to K through 8.
Okay.
Not pre-K through 8, you know, so, you know, there are issues that are probably that the principal feel at all level, principal administration, you know, lack of teachers, content teachers, because you're going to need content teachers, distribution of those content teachers, buildings sharing content teachers, or are we having content teachers in the same school, you know, so, you know, there are emerging issues that we may not have seen when we went to this configuration. So those need to be looked at. You know, start thinking about the process of you know, of fixing, you know.
Absolutely. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I had some new business. Trustee McGowan, do we have policy on homeschooled children? Because I know a number of people that are homeschooled and they don't get the sort of accreditation of the school district that they are that they've been proficient enough to graduate from our schools. We need to have a policy about that because it's very difficult for them to be able to get into. Although they might have been excellent students and performed very well in their homeschool setting, it's difficult for that to translate into documentation for college entrance.
Just to clarify, you mean, when you say homeschooled, you mean families that choose to not enroll their children and instead instruct them themselves or through tutors or...
Correct.
As opposed to, just to clarify, because sometimes in the school district terminology we talk about homeschool, children being assigned to home who are still our students but are being taught in another setting. For those who may not know, I was actually homeschooled my whole life, K through 12. So I'm very familiar with homeschooling in Florida where I grew up. And it's very state specific, and I'm actually involved in the Homeschool Legal Defense Fund, which is a nationwide nonprofit group that helps assist homeschooling children when there's issues. I think the way it works in New York, and I will look into this because it's an interest of mine anyway.
Thank you.
I think the way it works is that the district is not allowed to be involved and give diplomas to those, and they're required to get a GED or to be affiliated in some way with a private. Some homeschool groups will affiliate themselves with private schools and get a diploma that way, or get some kind of equivalency. But yeah, I'll look into that. It's an interest of mine anyway, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anyone else with new business?
Yes, ma'am. We have 2 new policies for a first reading on tonight. The first is a grading and promotion and retention policy, which is now uploaded. And again, this is just a first reading, so it's not implemented yet, but it's there for your information. And this talks about the criteria that the district can use in deciding whether to promote a student and or to not promote a student. But the most important, and of course, we obviously have lots of these procedures in place, but we've actually, I believe Dr. Warren, right, we've never had an actual policy on the books about this. Is that right?
So there's been things approved, but I don't think there's been a policy per se.
There's been lots of practices.
There's been practices.
Yes. So, on promotion and retention.
It's been practice on grading, but it's been policies on promotion and retention in the district.
That's right, thank you, yes. This is going to supplement those by clarifying who has the authority, and that's the principal. And most importantly, which was not made clear in the prior policy, I believe, is requiring the district to establish uniform grading policies and standards for across the entire district. Because I know that's been a concern, not just in parents, but also in teachers and principals, and some unintended inequities among different schools and among different grades and classes. So the idea set forth very clearly in the policy that it's going to be a uniform grading protocol and standard. Also attached, this is not part of the official policy that's baked in stone forever, but I know much work has gone in the behind the scenes over the last year with the administration and coming up with what are those procedures going to look like. And so a lot of work has gone into this. We've attached them as well to the policy so everyone can see what those procedures look like. And my understanding is the intent is next meeting we'll have a second reading and we'll have a presentation to talk about this as well. So I'd like to. That is the first reading, right? I think that's the way it works. Yes, that's right. Second up.
I didn't say that again. What did you say?
I just did we don't vote on anything for a first reading. It just that is the first reading.
But he just did the first reading.
Yeah, I'm just all right. Just give the community, give us time to go over this before y'all go.
Absolutely.
Vote.
It's there. It's all there. Rick will put it on the website as well, the same as he did in this meeting. And then we'll do a second meeting and again a presentation on it as well as the second reading at the next meeting. The second policy is the same, and that's how students are assigned to different schools and classes, clarifying that just because there's lots of different factors that go into the type of class that a child may be assigned to, including age, social and emotional maturity, demographics, academic ability, potential, and/or achievement, individual ability, etc., etc. We also have language in here in this policy about promoting diversity and promoting equity. And you can read it, it's about 1 page long, you can read the full policy. Okay. That's all the new business I have.
Anyone else? If not, motion to adjourn.
Trustee Saunders?
Second that.
Trustee McMillan? All those in favor?